England is full of interesting stately homes, and Oxford has its fair share of interesting houses in the near vicinity. Just over a week ago, I went to visit Coughton Park, which is the other side of Stratford-on-Avon, which isn't too far away. And I hadn't been there before, and I found it a fascinating place. It was built in the 1530s and belonged to the Throckmorton family, who were a recusant Catholic family. And there was an old church and a priest's hide hole. In fact, I think there were 2 or 3 priest's hide holes there. But they also had a number of interesting letters and archives from all sorts of kings and queens, dating actually back from even before the 1530s, when they actually built that particular house on the site of the land that had been given to them. Going back to even some of the Plantagenet kings, various charters and letters that had been written to them, because they had always been courtiers at the courts of the various monarchs, and particularly interesting correspondence during the reigns of the Tudors. One of the Throckmortons was a very close go-between between Queen Elizabeth I and Mary Queen of Scots, who has always been a great heroine of mine ever since I was a child. I think she's one of the most fascinating women in history. In fact, both queens are. I think they're 2 of the most fascinating. And one of the most fascinating things about them is perhaps that they never met, although various playwrights and writers have tried to speculate on what would have happened if they had. And they have there, actually, which I hadn't been aware of before, because I thought I had seen most places which had any memorabilia of Mary Queen of Scots. But they had the chemise she wore at her execution, and also her death mask. And because Mary Queen of Scots was actually, in fact, very tall. Not many people are aware of this. And she was about 5'11". She was nearly 6 foot, which in those days for a woman was extremely tall. Even for a man, it would have been extremely tall. In fact, it's one of the reasons why the unfortunate romance between herself and Lord Darnley took place, because he was the only tall male around, the only one who could look her in the eye, as opposed to the chest or below. And she loved dancing, and so therefore they were more or less of an equal height to dance. Anyway, I'd never actually seen the chemise was really interesting, because it looked really, you could tell, I stood beside it and you could tell, that I was sort of several inches beneath it, because I'm about 5'5", and you could tell that it obviously belonged to a very tall woman. And the death mask was interesting as well, because her face was quite full there, whereas usually portraits and pictures show a much leaner, angular. And of course, she would have been a middle-aged woman then, which, in fact, at the time really would have been considered quite old. So that was very interesting to see that, and quite fascinating. In fact, actually, the only pictures they don't unfortunately have a postcard or a picture of the death mask, but they have got a picture of the chemise, and it's actually, in fact, on the same postcard where they have an alb, which is a vestment, sorry, not an alb, a cope, of one of the vestments worn by one of the priests that used to say mass there. In fact, actually, this particular alb, I will keep saying alb, cope, had been embroidered by Queen Catherine of Aragon, who was Henry VIII's first wife. And the chemise is in between that and also a coat, a hunting coat that belonged to one of the Throckmortons in the 18th century. And both the coat and the vestment are really quite short. And then you've got this very tall chemise, long chemise. When I say tall, because the models that they dress them on, it looks quite extraordinary, because Mary Queen of Scots' chemise is head and shoulders, you could say, above the 2 men's coat and the vestment. So it was, as I say, it was absolutely fascinating seeing that. And there were beautiful gardens and grounds, and they had all these plants and herbs that they grew there, and they also sold them. So I was able to bring a few unusual herbs home to make additions to my herb garden on my roof terrace.